This week's Parsha is Parshas Pinchas. In this Parsha, there is a census. The Jewish people are counted. And at the end of the census, it says that among this census specifically, there was none of the people who sinned in the episode with the spies. All of those people that God had promised that they would perish in the desert had perished, except for Yeshua and Kollel. Yeshua and Kollel did not participate in the sin of the spies. In fact, they protested the sin of the spies vehemently. Therefore, they were the only ones who lived from that generation, the generation who was alive during the sin of the spies. Now, that statement is not entirely true. Rashi points out that the wording of the verse is that the people who were not of Ish were the men. The women also did not participate in the sin of the spies. They did not collaborate in any way, were not complicit in any way. So therefore, they also did not die in the desert, meaning that the women who were alive during the sin of the spies were still alive now. The next part of the Torah, immediately after this, the Torah discusses the daughters of Tzlafchad. The daughters of Tzlafchad approach Moshe because they want to get an inheritance in the land of Israel. And until now, it had not been clear what happens if a parent dies, if a father dies with no sons. Will his daughters inherit his portion in the land of Israel? And in the end, it turns out that yes, they do inherit a portion of the land of Israel. Either way, Rashi points out that when the daughters of Tzlafchad approached Moshe, it traces their lineage back to Yosef. Why does it do that? Because Yosef exhibited an extreme love for Eretz Yisrael, for the land of Israel. Because of this, Yosef asked the generations that followed him to take his remains up to the land of Israel to be buried. That's how much he loved the land of Israel. And Tzlafchad's daughters too, because of their great love for the land of Israel, approached Moshe because their inheritance, specifically their inheritance in the land of Israel, to them was of very large prominence. It was something that they loved very much. Moshe Zaychik points out an amazing point over here. If you think about it, it's amazing. You have these two lessons that we have. First of all, we have the lessons from the women, that the women did not participate in the sin of the spies. Then we have this story with Yosef and the connection to his great-granddaughters, the daughters of Tzlafchad, that they both shared the love of Eretz Yisrael. These two things are connected, are not casually connected. The Medrash puts them all together in the same paragraph. And the reason for this is because the reason why the women did not participate in the sin of the spies was because at the root of the sin of the spies was that the spies and the Jewish people in general did not have a great love of Israel. If they had a great love of Israel, even with all that the spies had said, with all the challenges of conquering the great giants, the love of Eretz Yisrael would have overcame all of that fear. So what was really lacking was their love of Eretz Yisrael. The women, though, possessed that love greatly, and therefore they refused to participate in the sin of the spies. Now, where did that come from? That came from the daughters of Tzlafchad. The daughters of Tzlafchad were known for their wisdom and for a leadership role in the women's population in the Jewish people. Therefore, the women had an influence from the daughters of Tzlafchad, who were their leaders. The daughters of Tzlafchad, in turn, their influence came from their great-grandfather, Yosef, who exhibited this extreme love of Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. Isn't it amazing how you see how one person can make such a tremendous difference? Because Yosef expressed his desire to have his remains in Eretz Yisrael, that influenced his great-granddaughters of Tzlafchad, who in turn influenced the entire female population of the Jewish people, which in turn granted them the merit of entering the land of Israel. Just a question on this week's Parsha. In the beginning of the Parsha, it talks about Pinchas being granted the level of priesthood, becoming a Kohen. One of the things that God gave him in return for his act of vengeance for Hashem was Hashem gave him the priesthood. One slight problem, though, is that Pinchas happened to be the grandson of Aaron. So why would he need the priesthood? He already was a priest because of his lineage. So Rashi explains that since at the time when the priests were consecrated, only Aaron and his sons were consecrated, and Pinchas had already been born. Therefore, Pinchas was not party to the consecration of the priest, and therefore he was not a priest yet. Now, in reward for what he had done, Hashem grants him priesthood. Now, the question that they ask is, why not? Why did they not include the grandchildren of Aaron in the priesthood? Doesn't that seem counterintuitive? Why would you only include the sons and the sons' sons who are born after the consecration, and not the sons' who were born before the consecration of the priesthood? That's the question. Have a good Shabbos.